aid for 11 years, and it really hasn't changed that much in 11 years. Just a different flavor of the types of fundings that you can receive, but processes all kind of work the same. So if you know it now, you know it probably for the foreseeable future. And if I always like to, yeah, I probably will hit on this at some other point in the presentation, but the best piece of advice I can give anyone on this call, besides just being here and making sure that you're informed yourself, is to apply for as many scholarship opportunities as you can, apply for as many financial aid opportunities as you can. You need to be a self-advocate. Colleges, universities are not always going to give you all of the resources you possibly can qualify for. You have to go out and research them. You have to review them. You have to apply. You've got to have that self-advocacy piece that you're running with as much as possible, so that you can get all the funding that's out there. And yes, you might have to apply, and you might have to put work and time and energy in. And for the parents on your call, yes, your students might have to put time and work and energy into this, but there are thousands upon thousands of dollars out there that are underutilized every single year, because there's extra components like applying, and students don't always realize that, and families don't always realize that. Great.
That's a good tip, Jack.
Mm-hmm.
And just so you know, I remember to hit record. I think you might have seen it. Right, I think after you said your name or something. So, I mean, most of it'll be there. Yeah.
That's right.
And I just want to let the attendees know that you can put questions in the Q&A box, and I believe the chat box is also available. But if you have a question, if you can try to use that Q&A box at the bottom of the panel on the right, then please do. But if you put one in the chat, we'll try to catch that as well. All right, go ahead. Yeah.
Great. All right. So we had a presentation. We had a series of presentations back in November, December, January that were more related to actually completing the financial aid application, the process of turning in verification documents, the types of funds that are available. And so this presentation is more geared towards what happens after you've applied. What happens after the financial aid application has been submitted to the college, received by the college, what happens after your financial aid has been awarded, the different steps that you, and when I say you tonight, everyone, I'm talking about students, but I know that, families were all involved in this together, but you, the student, need to take, what steps your family might need to take in order to accept funding. We want to make sure that you are not just have your application in there, but you actually have your financial aid award in place. You understand what that means, and you know, again, how to advocate for yourself if you need to, as far as requesting clarity about how funds are used or asking for additional resources, how you can plan out as early as possible what kind of resources you will have, so that you know what maybe the gap is as far as your educational costs, and you can start planning for that today rather than planning for it a couple months from now. So we're going to go through a number of different items that are going to be, you're going to see as you go through this process of applying for aid. And again, after the actual FAFSA, we're happy to take questions on the FAFSA itself. If we have it, I'll make sure that I get my information posted. We have other contact information posted at the end of the presentation if you needed to follow up on anything. But again, this is really geared towards what happens after that FAFSA has been submitted. The first thing that you should be aware of is that, within about it's 3 to 5 business days, but even most of the time within 24 hours of actually completing that online free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, you have access to something called a student aid report. Those of you on the call have already filled out a FAFSA. You may have even looked at your student aid report already, but if you haven't, it's there. It's available on the federal financial aid website. If you log back into your application, it will be an item that you can select and review. The student aid report is an important receipt. It tells you all of the information that you submitted on the FAFSA. It's basically a reminder of everything that you provided. You can make sure that any information that you submitted is accurate. We didn't add zeros to any of our tax information. We didn't add people to our household or leave people out of our household. We didn't misreport any kind of income information that might impact us. We can, just go line by line and see that. But it's also going to provide you some great summary information, such as what is your expected family contribution? The expected family contribution is that index item that dictates how much funding you're going to receive at any college or university. The EFC runs from 0 all the way up to 99,000. And everywhere in between those numbers, you can think of as a financial index. And it's looking at your family's income, your income as a student, household size, assets of the family. All of those figures that go on the FAFSA are spitting out or put in for one single purpose, and that's to get this EFC, expected family contribution. If you don't know what your EFC is, a lot of students don't know what it is, and they find out when they've actually been awarded financial aid. You don't have to be in that boat. You can find out right after applying. If you know what your EFC is, you have a very, very good idea of what kind of federal funding you have access to. Federal financial aid, federal grants, federal student loans. You also have a pretty good idea, if you're doing the research, of what other institutions might be able to offer you, because there are things called net price calculators. We're going to get you some information on those a little bit later. You'll have that listed on our resource section as well, where if you have information like your EFC or general information about your income, you can find out before you've even been awarded how much financial aid you can expect at the college, university you're attending. And for many of you who are still making those decisions between colleges, if you've got multiple colleges in your possibilities, and maybe you haven't gotten financial aid awards there yet, it's something that you can use to try to get more information, even if they've got a deadline coming up where you've got to decide and commit to a particular institution. The other great thing about the student aid report, the other thing we want to be reviewing, is whether or not you've been selected for verification, whether or not there's documentation that needs to be provided to the college or university that you might be attending. That's what verification is. It's the process the college and the university uses to make sure your FAFSA was filed correctly. You complete the FAFSA online. You can complete it on your phone, on a tablet, from any device that you want. Most of the times they're done accurately, but sometimes numbers do get moved around, transposed. And so schools are going to ask about 30%, 1 out of 3 roughly, of all students to provide proof that their FAFSA was filed correctly. It's a way to think about it. You can find out within 3 to 5 days of filing the FAFSA whether that's you. Looking at your student aid report, you do not need to wait for the college, universities you're looking at attending to tell you, hey, you need to turn paperwork in. And again, it's important to know that as early as possible so that you don't think you're finished with the process. And it can be misleading to think that you're finished with the financial aid application process because you've submitted the FAFSA. That's really just the first step at most institutions. There is this verification process. There's accepting your awards we're going to get into in a little bit here. But it's important to know if you've got extra paperwork to turn in, know it as early as possible. If you were selected for verification and you're applying to multiple schools, you might have multiple sets of documents to turn into each one of those schools. So again, knowing half the battle, being prepared so that you have it could be taxes, it could be worksheets. Every school might have different documentation, but it's relatively the same format. If you have that ready to go, you're going to just be more likely to be successful in getting the financial aid that you should be getting. If you provide verification documents too late, there's going to be a deadline. The college is going to tell you, we need your information by this date. If you don't pay attention to that, if you miss that email, if you miss that item in your student record, student account, maybe you miss out on funding. There could be supplemental resources, limited resources that they give to another student who has completed the verification process, even if you applied earlier. So just be aware of that. You can find your verification requirements, and you can find out if there's any other documentation requirements on the student aid report before the college tells you. And if we're trying to, cover all of our bases, dot all our I's, cross all our T's, that's something that we should have prepared as soon as possible, especially if we're looking at multiple schools and we might be looking at multiple financial aid packages. We want to compare them against each other. Sure. Yeah. Hi.
Everyone.
Oh, Tierney. Hello.
All the attendees. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. Okay.
If you don't already know, the SAR is important because Jack just spent 5 minutes on it. on this slide. So, student aid report. Make sure you pay attention to it. That's what I got out of it, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to get your student aid report within about 3 to 5 business days is the timeline, but really it's usually within a business day. If you filed a FAFSA anytime in the last couple months, you should be able to access it from I still say FAFSA.gov. That's the old site. It's technically www.studentaid.gov. And there's going to link on that main federal student aid webpage to complete your FAFSA. When you log back in, you'll be able to see that student aid report and get an idea of any of those items that you might be preparing for. And again, your EFC. We have in front of you is just a little representation what it's going to look like. Again, the key components, EFC, what's that figure right there? And then this item right here, your application status. Further down the page, you're going to see if there's any documents that are required up front, whether you were selected for verification, whether or not you're going to have to provide proof of citizenship, proof of high school completion, those kinds of things, and that do impact your federal financial aid eligibility. Okay. The other thing we want to make sure we cover is, let's say that you do review your student aid report and you realize I made a mistake. Right? Even now, even if we're close to maybe making a decision on our between multiple institutions, we could still make corrections to our FAFSA, and we should still make corrections to our FAFSA if there was an error made. Now, we want to be clear about this. You should not be changing your FAFSA because of recent changes in most situations. So what I mean by that is when you filled out the FAFSA, the idea is that it's a snapshot of you and your family's financial well-being at the time you filled out the application. So if you filled out that application and you had $10,000 in your bank account, you had to report that $10,000 as an asset. You are not going to update your FAFSA every time you spend money out of your bank account, even if there's a big expense that you spend. You're not going to update it because the assets change, for example. You wouldn't necessarily update your FAFSA because you lost a job or your parents lost a job. The FAFSA is a snapshot at the time you filed it. So you should only be fixing things that were wrong at that time or were transposed incorrect information from the taxes that you used. If we do have changes in our income, in our resources, in the assets that we actually have access to, we want to talk to the college about making those changes. Again, we don't change our asset numbers. We don't change the fact that we have no income currently if we lost our job, say in 2021, because the FAFSA that you all would be filing, or many of you all would be filing for the next school year, 21-22, is looking at 2019 taxes. They've already passed. It happened a year and a half ago. So we make corrections if we notice that there's errors. We make corrections if there are obvious errors, of course. If we have just updates to our income or our assets, we're not making those corrections, and we're talking with a college if we think that that's something that they should know about. And they absolutely should know if you lost your job or your family lost their family member lost their job, and that was a primary supporting source of your support. You could be able to file an appeal with the college and have that changed, but we wouldn't change that up front. We would talk to the school about that. But again, reviewing our student aid report, we see an error, we can make that correction within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long it is that you need to correct your to review your paperwork, and within a couple of days the school will get that updated FAFSA, and it's very likely they'll ask you why you made that correction. Right? There's another thing to keep in mind. If we do correct our FAFSA, you'll probably have to provide some document to the school to say why you did it. And if it's an obvious mistake, they'll say, oh, that makes sense. Thanks for making that correction for us, and we don't have to ask you about it. Some common areas that you might have see those issues: social security numbers, database, things that your demographic information, name, date of birth, using a nickname as a first name, using a middle name as a first name. Your parents' information has to be reported, their first initial, their last name. Sometimes that doesn't get reported correctly because you didn't know that your mom's first name was actually a nickname. Those kinds of things. We find that out a lot of time when we're doing financial aid. There's a lot of times questions about divorced parents, remarried parents. If your parents are separated or divorced, you don't include both of their information. Your biological parents are separated, divorced, you may not be including both of their information. You only include one parent's information. And if that parent's remarried, you might have to include step-parents' information. There's a lot of confusion with that. If you're not sure exactly how you handle that kind of situation, always talk with the school that you might be attending. Again, I'll leave my information up here as well. You can always reach out to me too. But those are some areas that we see common issues. Untaxed income, resources that are received that don't go through don't go through a W-2 or a tax entity. Sometimes they're not reported. The child support payments would be one of those things. We need to make sure we're including those. Payments to a 401k that are not taxed, those kinds of things maybe we don't realize are part of the application. So as we're doing the FAFSA, we want to read each item, each question very carefully. If we notice an error, we can always go back and fix it. Tax filing errors, common things that we don't look at our taxes every day, so we think we know what we're typing in, don't necessarily, and maybe a mistake was made. When you get to the tax section of your FAFSA, I think most of you in here, again, have probably already seen it, but there's an option to use something called data retrieval that links your IRS information directly in from the FAFSA. Use data retrieval when you can. If you didn't use data retrieval initially on your FAFSA, you can log back in today and you can make a correction to use it. If you use data retrieval, which is a process, again, that brings information in from the IRS directly, you're not going to be asked those questions about your income. You're generally not going to be asked for verification information about your income or your family income, which can save you a little bit of time, sometimes save you a lot of time, especially if maybe your family's got a confusing tax situation. Use data retrieval when you can. Household members, again, common thing, who should be included in the household, whether or not you get to include older siblings, whether you get to include cousins or non-direct family members who live with you. Those are all areas that we sometimes see confusion with. And if you made a correction or if you need to make a correction to your FAFSA, generally you want to talk with a college or talk with a university that you're working with if they've already received your application, if those numbers will change. Let them know ahead of time so that if there is paperwork you need to turn in, you know what it is too. And it's not a surprise for you or for them that you've got a big change. You go from 2 family members to 8 family members. Well, you left all your siblings out, and that might have been the reason, an obvious, clear reason why that happened. You want to make sure that you're telling the school up front so they know what to expect, and so if there's extra paperwork you got to turn in. Last thing on here is probably the one I run into the most often. Your FAFSA itself is must be e-signed usually. The e-signature process using something called an FSA ID, which is a Federal Student Aid ID number. It's a username password tied to your Social Security. That ID is used to sign your FAFSA. Parent will be signing, student will be signing most applications. Sometimes we choose not to do that. You have the option of signing without signatures. You have the option of signing a paper application. All of those things could lead you to not having your FAFSA completed right away. And maybe that 3 to 5 timeline range doesn't really happen. If you have to mail in a signature page, it's going to take you 3 to 4 weeks usually to hear that your FAFSA has been processed. If you don't submit signatures, if you don't have your parents e-sign, if you choose not to e-sign, and still submit your application, your FAFSA is not going to be approved, and you'll have to go back in and you'll have to figure that process out where you've got that e-signature on your application, or you'll have to print a signature page and send that in. Again, a lot of not students, I would say families don't always see this, but with students who are trying to do this on their own, sometimes that happens. We're just trying to get the FAFSA filed, so we just push through and we submit without signatures. We don't necessarily want to do that if we can avoid it, because it usually doesn't get your application through the door. All right, and I just want to point out in the chat, Tierney has linked a great resource for confirming who your parent would be if you're in one of those situations where you've got a separated or divorced household.
Jack, you're doing it all tonight. Good job. So we did get a question, and I think she sent it privately. Yeah. She said, Emily says, if I have not applied to NOVA, so this is a potential student for NOVA, will I still be able to see my SAR? And the answer is yes. The SAR is not tied to your college application per se. If you listed NOVA on your SAR, then you should see that when you review your SAR. But the SAR is a summary of the information you provided on your FAFSA. So it doesn't matter whether or not you have applied to NOVA or not. If you put NOVA on your FAFSA, then you should see that as a school listed. You got anything to add, Jack?
Yeah, well, just it goes hand in hand with that. So if you haven't applied to the school, the school's not going to be able to tell you verification that needs to be turned in, any paperwork, any estimates of financial aid awards. So there is that component to it, but you can absolutely fill out a financial aid application and put down any school in the country, even if you haven't applied. I put down Harvard every year that I do my FAFSA at the beginning, just because I like to feel good about myself. I'll pretend, right? I'm never going to apply, but you can put down any school in the country on your FAFSA and it will show up. And the only thing is, until you've been accepted at that school or until you've applied to that school, you're not going to be able to do the follow-up. You do Yale, Tierney, right?
Oh, I don't even try. Nah,
So,
I'm sure you get into Harvard.
sure. Yeah. What's great when you do put schools down on the FAFSA, you actually have some additional information that they show you, such as graduation rates, average cost, that kind of thing. So again, you can pick up to 10 schools on your application and get a little information that way as well, without even going directly to each school's website. The verification, I covered a lot of this already, but again, the verification process is the follow-up to the application for financial aid. Around 30% of students are selected for what colleges call verification, which is income, household size, sometimes identity. Those 3 items need to be verified, and we've got a very specific way that we have to go about doing that that's mandated by the federal government. There's also just questions, though, that maybe come up because of mismatched information. Maybe you reported on your application to the college that you attended a previous school, and on your FAFSA you said this is your first time in college, and maybe that needs to be addressed. That's not maybe necessarily verification, but it'll be documentation that you might need to turn in. And I would say with all students, maybe around 40 to 50% of freshmen are going to be turning in some kind of paperwork to the financial aid office to receive funding their first year. As they go on, sophomore level, junior level, senior level, that likelihood goes down. The system uses some logic to make sure that they're not selecting everyone every single year, but it's entirely possible that you could be unlucky and have verification for 4 years, even as a senior. Just be aware of it, note it's there, make sure that you understand how your college or your institution is going to ask you for information. Most schools have moved to completely online formats, especially in the world we're in right now, but there are still some that want you to fax paperwork. There's still some that will take mail. Most have some kind of student portal. Most have some kind of, or multiple student portals that you're going to be accessing, but they're going to be different from school to school. Know that if you got multiple schools you're applying to, you might have multiple sets of documentation to turn in, and you want to know the deadlines that they set out and how you're going to go about meeting those deadlines. You have to have paperwork in by a certain date, just have to be reviewed by a certain date. Those are all little minute details that every school might have a little bit different, especially dates. We want to make sure we meet those verification deadlines that they set, because they could offer you and estimate an award to you that looks great, but if you don't meet the deadline they set, maybe half that money goes to someone else, or maybe some portion of it goes to someone else, and then you've shot yourself in the foot just because of some procedural stuff. We don't want to see that happen.
Ouch. So we have a question, and I think I'm answering, but the last time I tried, I unmuted some people, and it worked out well. So okay. I don't know who SR is, but they said they had a question, and I'm going to unmute you if you want to ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. My question was, this is my 3rd child in school, but every year with my other 2, I have been selected for verification, and I always select the IRS pull through so the information automatically is there. Why am I always selected?
You're unlucky. You're very unlucky. You should play the lottery, is where I would go if you get selected every year. The reality is that there is logic built into the FAFSA that is going to make a student more likely to be selected. But there's nothing in there that's going to make them not selected. Like there's no need for them to be selected. So if you've had it every year for 2 students, I would just say, and for yourself,
I went back to school too.
I would say that you're somewhat unlucky for the most part, especially if it's multiple years. The first year as a freshman, there's a much higher likelihood you're selected for verification than as an upperclassman. So there's that piece to it. You know, multiple students in at the same time. That first year, a lot of times you'll see it. But year 2, year 3, year 4, if you keep getting selected, then we're just probably very unlucky. Even if we're using data retrieval, I wouldn't think that there's anything that you need to necessarily worry about that you're doing wrong. But there are people out there who are going to be in that situation, unfortunately.
And you're special. You're special. And that means you should be a pro by now. Okay. First question.
Yeah, very good. But yeah, don't think they're out to get you. I promise that they're not, and I say this with knowing exactly how it sounds. They're not, they don't have their stuff together enough to get you. Okay, so it really just is probably luck. Hopefully this year you see something a little different. Just some items on this page, information that you might be asked, go back in and use data retrieval. If you did not use data retrieval initially and you get selected for verification and you go use it, it takes away most of the requirements that you submit tax information, which for many families is very fortunate, very helpful. W-2 forms, college forms are another big one. These are going to be college specific, but they might need to verify your home size. And in the FAFSA, you put down a number. There's 5 people in my home, and you put down a number in college. There's 1 person in college. The verification process wants names, ages, relationships, and you might have to provide that. High school, college transcripts, those are always going to be possibilities, especially if you're transferring from another institution. And then things that you can just have somewhere saved in a file or somewhere on your computer so that when they're asked, because there's a good chance they'll be asked, they're ready to go, and it's not something that causes frustration or roadblocks to getting you funded. Okay. Again, keep copies of everything. Make sure number 4 on here. I've covered most of these other ones, but number 4 on here, how does your financial aid office communicate with you, the student? Every office does things a little bit differently. Every school does things a little bit differently. Know how that school operates. You're not going to get, for my institution, we are going to send you an email, but we're not going to send you an email with a whole bunch of information. We're going to send you an email that says, log into your MyNova portal, your school portal, to find out what we need from you. Security, for security reasons. A lot of schools do the same thing. A lot of schools have just different means of getting in touch with you and requesting paperwork. And I wish we were all in the same system. There is some schools will oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I'm losing my words, but some schools will sign up for the same verification process. They'll all use a single source to collect verification documents, so you don't have to send individually to multiple schools, but that doesn't always happen. And so you want to know, if you're looking at multiple schools, how does that school collect paperwork, and how am I going to be told about that paperwork? Because you can, and this is a common refrain that I hear, no one told me I had to turn that in. I didn't know you sent me an email. I didn't know I had to check my to-do list. And now I don't have financial aid to pay the classes that I signed up for already. I don't know does not help you at all. You know that already. I'm sure your students know that already, but I don't know will not get you any additional funding. It will not get you in a better situation financially. You need to know. And so if you're looking at multiple schools, even if you're just looking at one, how will they communicate with you? They will probably not send you emails to your personal email account. There'll probably be another way that you're going to be alerted of what needs to be taken care of.
But if you do, make sure you check your spam folder.
Great, yeah, great. Spam folder, trash. Unfortunately, automated emails, they end up there. So cover your bases. And then this last one, ask questions. Advocate, advocate, advocate. Again, you don't know what you don't ask, and there is a lot of financial aid offices have to cover themselves. The CYA, we have to make sure that there's a lot of information given to students to cover all of the things that could happen. And unfortunately, my experience is that in giving all of that information, things can get missed. Very important items can be missed, whether they be deadlines or whether they be applications. So we want to make sure we're asking questions, know that it's okay to ask questions, and that you need to self-advocate, because you're not going to have a financial aid advisor generally. You're not going to have a counselor or academic advisor that's going to lead you through this process. You're going to be on your own for the most part and following the framework that they've set up for you. And if you find someone to do that, that's great. But I don't want you to count on that, because not all financial aid offices have got the staffing, the resources to do that. They have the staffing and resources to just process as much as funding as they can. So ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There is the whole no such thing as a stupid answer. Don't worry about that piece. Yes.
Jack, we have a question.
Great. It's a great segue.
Sophia has a question. She says, when we submitted the FAFSA, the system would not let us use the IRS DRT, which is the data retrieval tool, attendees. Why would it not let us do that?
Unfortunately, there is, I would say that works for about 95%, 90 to 95% of people. So most you can go through it, but there are some situations where you just won't be able to use it because it doesn't function for that situation. In the cases of a separated parent, divorced parent who filed jointly still with the separated spouse, ex-spouse, that happens a lot. Unfortunately, you can't use data retrieval then, because it can only pull the actual tax return information, which has got both parties' information on it. You're also going to have problems using data retrieval if you owe anything to the IRS, if there's a lien on your account. Fortunately, that prevents the system from working. You are going to not be able to use data retrieval if you, again, this one is, you can't really know for sure about this, but if your information that you're reporting on data retrieval doesn't match the IRS's database, so they ask you to plug in information from your tax return, your filing address, your name, date of birth. If the tax preparer accidentally changed your date of birth by one day, you won't know that internally. There's no way to see that on your tax return, but it just won't find you in the system. If you misspelled something on your tax return, you need to misspell it on your FAFSA. If your name is a different name on your tax return, again, a lot of times tax preparers, that's not, last name, social is what really matters, but the first name is a middle name now, or it's two first names, and it should be a first name and a middle. That needs to be changed when you use data retrieval. It has to be the incorrect spelling or the incorrect name in order to match your information. There's a couple of those little idiosyncrasies that you might be able to find and figure out. Again, the changed name thing is a big one, or the misspellings are big ones that we see. But you're not going to know if there's some internal issue that was typed in incorrectly, and you might just be in a situation where it's frustrating, but you can't get through it. The only other thing that I've run into is identity theft. We do see that a lot as well. If you had identity theft in the last 3 years, it's either 3 years or 5 years, you're not able to use data retrieval. The security function, security lock in place that prevents that. So those are the most common ones. There's some other just random things that we've seen before, like amended tax returns being filed really, really late and causing issues, but those would be the main ones. It's okay if you can't use data retrieval as long as you're responding to requests for documents from the school very quickly, right? So if the school needs taxes and you can't use data retrieval, but you get them into them right away, it's not going to be a problem. If the school needs taxes and you found that out a week before classes start, it would be a lot easier to give them a data retrieval option. So again, it's not going to hurt you usually. It's not going to really impact you usually if you have to hand type in your info. It's just something else that you got to deal with and be aware of to make sure that it doesn't impact you later on.
Okay, and Jack, we are coming up on the 20-minute mark.
Okay. We're gonna...
to let you know.
Thank you for my time.
No problem. I did have one more question. I think it'd be quick and I might be able to answer it. The question is from Joy. If you're deciding between schools and have received financial aid offers from some, but haven't received information yet from others, is it okay to contact the school's financial aid office to get a status update, especially since decision day is approaching? And I'll say yes. If you have any questions about the status of your financial aid, please contact the financial aid office at the school. They should be able to help you with that. Jack, you got anything to add?
I had six students that I answered that question for today. Actually, it's a common question right now. Some schools will tell you absolutely this is a good estimate. Some schools will just be able to give you federal information. Always ask, because they know we all know that there's decisions that need to be made, especially if you tell a school, look, I'm not going to pick you if you don't give me an idea. They're going to give you some idea. I can tell you that. But advocate, advocate, advocate. No one's going to look at you sideways for asking about your award, especially right now when they know that you might have that decision to make. All right. I'm going to make sure that we get you out of here by 7:02, everyone. So we're gonna move a little quicker than we have been, maybe. Maybe we won't have to, but make sure that we get any questions that we have for anyone that doesn't get covered by the material here. Change in circumstances, I kind of mentioned this already, but just to clarify, we know that there's always changes in circumstances. There's always a possibility for jobs to change, income to change, family situations, household size to change, especially in this environment. There's going to be probably more changes that families have experienced over the next 2 years in financial aid that we're going to be factoring in than we've ever had to do before. But there's a way to do it. You have to file your financial aid information initially with the appropriate base year, the right tax year. So for 2021, 2022, which is going to be for the next academic year, we have to use 2019 taxes. You had to file with 2019 taxes. You didn't have any options. Once that FAFSA is filed, though, you can provide new information to the college saying, look, my 2020 taxes, I just filed them. They're vastly different. I lost my job mid-year. Pandemic happened. You can even use estimates from the current year. 2021, you can say I lost my job at the beginning of the year. My taxes for 2020 aren't much different, but I know 2021 is going to be. And so colleges and universities can use what we call professional judgment to say, look, we should not use those 2019 figures. We should use 2020 or 2021. Every college and university are going to have different steps that you're going to go through in order to be able to do that. You're definitely going to provide documentation, W-2s, pay stubs, or recent tax returns. You're going to have a worksheet to complete. You're probably going to have to write some sort of statement that just clarifies what's going on. But almost every college and university in the country is going to have that option. They're going to allow you to make use of that option. And there's even going to be more resources this year for you to make use of it because of what's going on out there. There's pools of money that have been given through these stimulus funds. They're going to help people be better able to apply for we call income recalculation requests. More support for that, making sure that your paperwork is in order and that you don't what you need to provide in order to be able to have that reviewed. But again, we have to file the FAFSA with the right information first. As soon as we file that FAFSA, gets to the college reviews the FAFSA, we should let them know that we think we want to file an appeal if your 2020 or 2021 income is lower, your family's income is lower than what it was in 2019. Okay. When you've been awarded, again, every college university is going to tell you about your awards a little bit differently. Everyone just got a mailed letter, right? And that's what told you. We almost all have some kind of student portal now, and most are going to have your awards posted online in that student portal. But you want to know how they're going to tell you. Do they email you? Do you log into a specific place? Is there a separate portal from a financial aid portal from the actual academic portal that you log into? These are all things that we want to be aware of so we can find out our award as early as possible. And if we need to, again, advocate for ourselves or ask questions, we know how to do that. I cannot tell you how many students I run into who get awarded in April and come and sign up for classes in July and walk into the office or now call into the office and say, how much money do I have? Well, you were told 4 months ago, and that's fine. And if that's now this is what you're planning, that's fine. But it would be better, I think, to have an idea as early as possible. And we want to make sure we know how those award letters are sent, usually, again, electronically. But do you have to reply to them? Are you going to have to accept those awards by a certain deadline? Those are all things that are really important to know. And those are all things that are going to be unique from school to school. I want to point out something specific. It's coming up. It's been put on the back burner because of the pandemic. But we talk about awards a lot in financial aid, and you probably, if you've been in financial aid or applied for aid before, you've heard award package, financial aid award. Award can be misleading, right? Award sounds great. I want an award, you want an award, we all want awards. But sometimes awards are your awards are made up of free money, grants, but they're also made up of loans. They're also made up of maybe work study, things you have to work to earn. And the award may be misleading in thinking that all that money is free. If you receive student loans, you receive a financial aid award, but it's all money that has to be paid back, and it's, it's a loan. So we are changing the name, and I don't know when it's going to necessarily happen, when it's going to fully roll out, and when it's going to fully roll out for everyone in the country, not just Virginia and not just certain schools, but we will have college financing plan will probably take over in the name of financial aid award. So just for the sake of future knowledge, college financing plan means award. It's the idea is going to give you a little more information than just what you receive. You're going to have more information about total cost, average graduation rates, expected family contribution. Those kinds of things are going to all be included rather than just a set amount of money. But it's something that you just want to be aware of. The nomenclature is changing, and you don't want to be confused when people start saying college financing plan. We probably will take years to be able to say that. I don't know if I'll ever be able to say that I've been doing it too long, saying financial aid award, but it is coming up, and it's something that you want to be aware of because it'll probably be universal across the country pretty soon.
Jack, we're at 15 minutes.
Okay. We have award notifications. Again, how you're going to be contacted. Sometimes they're going to send you an email with all this info. Sometimes you'll have to log into your account to view all this info. We want to read our award letter or college financing plan very carefully because it tells us when to expect things like refunds. What happens if you drop your classes? What happens if you withdraw? What happens if we have to drop out of a whole semester? If I'm not taking a full-time course load, what does that mean for my financial aid? It's probably going to be prorated, less is going to be available. So all of that should be either contained in your award letter or linked from your award letter. And I'm not telling you that you need to become a financial aid expert or a financial aid advisor like me, but I will tell you that the college or the university likely expects that you have read that award letter and that you understand every bit of it to a T. And so if you were to come in and say, I dropped a class and I didn't know I was going to lose money for dropping the class, well, let's say it was in your award letter. It will not change what the end result is for you. So my advice is to read very carefully. And if there's any piece of it you're not sure about, ask, especially as a freshman, especially as a new student, because the award process probably will not change year to year to year. You get it down right the first time. You understand how refunds work the first time, how to use financial aid from to purchase books from your bookstore or books on credit, those kinds of things. Those are all things we want to know as early as possible. And so we don't have to find them out as a sophomore and realize we missed out on things.
And Jack,
I
just want to tell them these are some sample award notifications.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just some sample award notifications.
Yeah. But these are not what everyone's going to look like. Every school is different. That's why, unfortunately, it's confusing, because you will have one represented in this fashion. You might have them represented in another fashion, so on and so on. I just really quickly want to hit on these two right here. Again, you might see something similar to this, but offered funding, accepted funding, these are grants. These are automatically accepted. But if you see a loan, you're going to see it offered, and you might need to accept. There's other steps you need to take a lot of times if there's any loan or borrowed money involved. So do be aware of that. The other thing that you were going to see in an award letter or a college financing plan, when you see the entire plan, is you should see a breakdown of the yearly awards that you have, of semesterly awards that you have, and then cost of attendance. Cost of attendance is a big deal. They will not always be combined. So this is Norfolk State's award letter. They combine your cost of attendance information and your award information on the same page. Some institutions, you're going to see these separated, but they're going to be next to each other. But the key is that you know what you're paying for. You don't just want to know these numbers. Yeah, these numbers are important, but you want to know what you're actually paying at the school that your financial aid is covering. And so again, I'm not going to drill too deeply into this particular award letter because we've got this on the next set of slides. But if you're looking, your direct costs are things that you have to pay for out of pocket to be sitting in class, and to be they're paid directly up front, basically. They're not things that are incurred throughout the semester. I like to think of them as what you need to be sitting in class, because if you don't have to pay. You can't be sitting there. So that's tuition and fees. That's going to be room and board if you're living on campus. Indirect costs are going to be those ones that are incremental, that come throughout the year, that are going to be different from student to student. Books and supplies, transportation, personal expenses are listed here. You'll see that this is what you're going to be paying out of pocket up front each semester, or probably half of this, half for fall, half for spring, and this is what you're going to be paying over the course of the school year in incremental payments. We want to know not just that we have a big pool of money, because let's say, again, this is something that we miss a lot. You see this big pool of gift aid here. This student is getting $16,000. And if you just think of it from a dollar perspective, I mean, that's a lot of money. I feel great. I'm getting $16,000. We want to know what you're paying as well. You're paying $16,000. If you're getting $16,000, but your total cost for the year are $26,000, that's a $10,000 gap. Right? That's $10,000 that's going to be made up in loans. $10,000 going to be made up of payments out of pocket, scholarships. Those are $10,000 that are not coming from free money. And so it's important to know, just because you got a big pool of free money there, the net cost, that free money pool subtracted from the cost of attendance, that difference is what you still have to pay. And so if you're going to a college that's got higher overall costs, if they give you $100,000, let me go this. If they give you $40,000 of grant aid, but it costs $70,000 to go there, you are still paying $30,000 of loans and grants. If they give you $10,000 of grant aid, it costs $25,000 to go there, you're paying much less, even though you're getting a big pool of money. Again, obvious stuff that makes sense, that we know, but we want to make sure that we have eyes wide open when we're looking at these award letters, because sometimes it can get really easy to focus on the free money, the grants, the total dollar figure of what we're getting instead of the net cost. And if, again, we're going to a higher cost school, we just got to factor that in and make sure we're paying attention to that. We don't want to be misunderstanding what our overall costs are going to be, because there's so much more money in play at some of these other some schools that maybe have more resources available but higher overall tuition. Other piece is right here, free aid versus loans, right? This, I feel like federal subsidized loan is pretty obvious. It's a loan. It's money that has to be paid back. It's money that you are not getting and is going to be forgiven, usually in any capacity. It's something that it will be debt to you. But if we don't read this line right here, or if we just read federal subsidized and we get really excited because we see all these numbers and then we move real quickly over here, this happens. We see this as free money, or we see this as something besides a loan. We want to make sure we're understanding the difference between gift aid and loan aid, money that has to be paid back versus money that's just given to us. Now, bottom line is that award letter or that college financing plan is going to give you the full line here, but you need to make sure you get to that third word. I've even seen some, and they don't see this too much anymore, but I used to see award letters that had LO as loan, right? So federal subsidized LO. They didn't type out the whole loan, like they didn't have space in the margins or something. That's still a loan, even if it's not clear that that's what it is. So we want to know the difference between gift aid, loan aid, so we know what we're actually paying out of pocket, what we're going to be expected to pay back in the long run. If we know what we have as a freshman, multiply that by 4, plans to do a 4-year program, that's how much debt we're probably going to have over the long haul for our undergraduate degree. And that helps us make those decisions about, how we're going to live our life when we're in school and whether we apply for scholarships, so on and so on. All right. Again, comparing net price against the total aid is very important, because we don't want to be, again, you can go to a school that gives you $40,000 and cost, $60,000, you pay $20,000 out of pocket. You go to a school that costs $20,000 and they give you no aid, you pay $20,000 out of pocket. The same situation, but it might just seem better because one gives you funding. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't change who you are, or it doesn't change how you're paying for school or how much you're paying. All right. We always accept free money first, of course. That's an obvious. Most of the time, you don't even have to accept grants. They're auto-accepted for you, because who would give up free money? The earned money piece would be work study awards, which are full pools of money that allow a student to get a job on campus. They are right now in pandemic. During the pandemic, those jobs were a little more limited than normal. But as we come out of it and as things change, we fully expect we fully expect more of those positions to come back on. So if you're looking for a job on campus, make sure you're looking into the work study programs. And then borrowed money is the last thing that we're accepting. And if we are borrowing money, we should always 99.2% of the time, federal loans are going to be the best thing for you. They are the lowest interest rates out there. There's almost no one who can get a better interest rate than a student loan, federal student loan. Loans are in the student's name. They are not in the parent's name. There's no cosigner required. They are limited. They are a certain amount that you can take out every year. The interest rates are sub 3% right now. They just are the best. And right now, if you have a federal loan, they've been paused. Payments have been paused since through September of this year. There's all these extra things that can happen with a federal loan. So they're the best financing tool out there. But after federal loans, you're going to be offered other types of loan funding, things like Parent Plus loans. You might even go into the private market to look for a loan. Make sure you're shopping. Make sure you're shopping when you're looking at loans, because outside of the federal funding, there's a lot of variety in the type of educational loan that's out there.
Shopping and reading. We spent quite a bit of time on this last week, just talking about, just paying attention. If you don't need all of the loan that you're offered, don't take it all. Listen to me, okay? Because you will have to pay it back.
Yeah, it does not go away. It does not, unfortunately. You can get out of, maybe they'll cancel loan debt, maybe, right? I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to hold your hope on too.
They might cancel a portion of it, and that'd be great. But still, make good decisions now, and so you don't regret later. If you need the loan, use it for what you're taking it out for, but don't just use it and try to get a refund and buy a car. I don't know. Just pay attention. Don't try to use it for vacations and all that stuff. Pay attention, please. Listen to me, okay? Who pays? Well, it's on pause right now, but I have to pay it monthly when it starts back up. So
yeah, I don't remember when I started paying my loans back, but I still am. And you guys will probably be in the same situation.
Right. Can I say really quick, Jack, we're talking about comparing offers, just that what you get from one college is probably going to be different from what you're offered at another. And so I get calls quite a bit from students who are like, this school offered me this amount, but I only got this amount, offered this amount here. Different schools, different pot of funds, different population. There could be needier students at the other school, and so they all come up with what they call their own awarding method to determine how they want to award the state funds. Now, federal aid is going to be the same across the board, but state grants are going to be different, and as well as institutional, because that's based on the institution's awarding. So
absolutely, you're going to see just schools with more money are going to be able to offer more funding, but a lot of times they're going to cost more too. So it's the whole package we want to be looking at. And I will just tell you right now that whatever amount of money, in most situations, whatever amount of money they offer you, you're going to feel like it's probably not enough. And that's okay. The key is that you look at the big picture. What am I paying for the whole school year? Might be paying out of pocket, and is that still affordable to me over the course of 2 years, 4 years, 6 years of school? But it can be very surprising how drastically different those awards could be from college to college. All right, I think we were here. Throw out this little plug for ourselves. Some community colleges in Virginia would not give out a student loan automatically. You do have to apply for it, and you have to contact the college individually. Most other four-year institutions, private, public, nonprofit, are going to automatically offer you loans as part of your award. Just the nature of their pricing and how much their cost is. So just be aware of that if you are looking at a VCCS school. And again, if you're receiving aid, your award letter is really important so that you are not missing out on enrollment requirements, deadlines for accepting funding and being able to use it for refund purposes or for book purchasing purposes. Payment deadlines. Once you've accepted financial aid, something that I run into sometimes just because it's really easy to sign up for classes at my institution. If you have financial aid and it's enough to pay your bill and you accept it, if you register in classes, those classes are going to be paid for, right? So we need to be aware of that. And if we have a deadline to drop a class with a refund, we want to make sure we meet it. If we have a deadline to drop a class with a withdrawal, we want to make sure that we meet it. And your only way you're going to know about those deadlines is by reading and advocating for yourself. And we don't want to find out after the fact that we missed one of those deadlines, especially if financial aid's in play, right? We want to kind of wrap up with some other opportunities for getting funding. The financial aid application, you know, once you've done it, you've done it, you've done it. You submitted your verification, you submitted your paperwork, you get an award, and that's your award. Outside of you filing an income reduction appeal, outside of you filing an appeal for maybe a cost of attendance change, which is something could be done at some of those other higher cost schools, outside of you telling the school, hey, something's different with my FAFSA, you know, you're set in stone. Your award's set in stone. Your award is what it's going to be for the upcoming school year, and hopefully you've done it really early so you have months to think about it. If you need additional resources, if you need additional funding to cover that gap between the financial aid you're receiving and the overall cost of school, well, this is, you know, that timeline, this timeline now is where you have, you know, hopefully some time to make up that gap. You know, you can work, your student can work, parents can work, and we can just, you know, work and never sleep and maybe save enough money to cover whatever that is. There's only so many hours in a day, though. There's only so much money that's out there, and there's only so much, you know, job's going to really pay you. Other ways of getting additional resources really revolve around finding scholarships or other grant, federal, state, local funded programs that provide scholarship-light funding to help offset educational costs. Scholarships are the great equalizer in financial aid. As I said at the very beginning, you should all apply for scholarship, apply for every single one that you can, and we should be applying not just as freshmen, but as upperclassmen as well. You apply and win $5,000 of scholarships for this upcoming school year. That would be wonderful. That would be great. That would be amazing. If you do not continue to apply or do not continue to renew your applications, which people sometimes just don't do, well, that $5,000 goes away as a sophomore, or a big portion of it can, right? And now you have a gap that maybe you didn't plan for or you weren't ready to cover. But scholarships are a great equalizer because they do. Financial aid is mostly need-based. Scholarships can be need-based, but a lot of times they're merit-based as well, which means that it's based on not just you and your background, but it makes on you actually doing something, you applying, putting yourself out there, trying to convince a scholarship organization to give you some help to offset your college cost. Finding them is sometimes, I hear two things whenever we talk about scholarships, two, like the negative things is, well, I've applied for a couple of scholarships and I didn't win anything. I don't think it's worth my time. And then I don't know where to find scholarships. Those are the two things that I hear the most. Not worth your time. That's a mental exercise that we've got to do. If you spend 40 hours applying for scholarships and you win a $500 scholarship, which two things, I don't see most students spending 40 hours applying for scholarships. That doesn't happen. If it did, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you about how much scholarship money is out there. If you spend 40 hours applying, you win a $500 scholarship, you paid yourself $12.50 an hour. That's a very small scholarship in the grand scheme of things. Most of the time you win bigger awards. But even at $500, it's $12.50 for you sitting in front of a computer and sending out applications. That's really not too bad. Most people who do that amount of work are going to get much more than 500. And it just is a matter of you putting the time and the resources in to applying to many opportunities as you can find, not just the easy ones. The easy ones are the ones at your college that are already sponsored by your college. You should definitely apply for those. The easy ones are the ones that are sponsored by your high school, your school system, your county, whatever district you're in. Those are right there. You should absolutely apply for those because, again, they're for you, but they're easy. They're usually a one-size-fits-all application or an application that you're already filling out. But you need to go further than that too. You should be looking at your program of study. You know, is there any specific scholarships offered through the institution or through local, maybe trade associations? You should be looking at businesses, your employers, parents' employers, nonprofits, for-profits, civic organizations, religious organizations. What I like to think of it as is it's just like finding a job. Scholarship searches and applications are just like a job hunt. You could go to Monster, Indeed, any of these job hunting websites, and you could find thousands of opportunities that are just, you know, a keyboard click away. But you're competing with everyone in the country for those opportunities. That's the nature of things. You could also find a job by asking your cousin if you could get a, can he get you a job, you know, where he works right down the road. And, you know, that's how I got my first job. Those are the kinds of things that happen. It's a lot easier that way. Personal connections within your network, within your group and circle of influence, those kinds of connections. You find scholarship opportunities like that, you have a much better chance of winning. You have a much better chance of being the one selected. And so the mindset that I would have is that mindset: local scholarship opportunities, local organizations, businesses, religious civic groups, trade associations that are in my area, where I live, where I work, where I go to school, where my parents live, work, go to school. And you'll be surprised at how many opportunities that are out there. Scholarships are a great marketing tool for any of these organizations. That's why they're there in many cases. And the grand scheme of things, it's a win-win. It's a win for you, you get free money. It's a win for them, they get free marketing and a tax write-off. So there's thousands of opportunities out there. We don't necessarily want to go online for the first set of them. We should be applying for scholarships through our school, through our high school, and through finding these organizations in our community and maybe going to them individually and going to their websites, their places of business, and saying, do you offer any opportunities? That's what I would be doing. That's what I encourage you all to be doing. That's what I've seen students have the most success with. If nothing else, if that just, we can't do that, that's just not in the cards, so we don't have the time, you apply for every one of those online opportunities that you can find. Right, that are just at your fingertips, and know that it's worth your time, and know that it's worth your resources. It's worth that investment.
Hey, Jack.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. You just did it. Nope. I was just going to ask if you could flip to the.
That's got these scholarship websites on it.
Yeah.
Good segue.
Great tips too. So.
So I just because I hit on it, payment plans. Again, most colleges will have a payment plan. If you do decide to pay out of pocket, ask. Make sure you know what those payment plans involve. Is there a fee? Is there a upfront charge? What's the down payment? Those kinds of things. Most schools will give you that opportunity. All right. So again, we were almost out of time, or we are out of time. I'm running into my overtime now. The websites that you see here are very helpful in your own self-advocacy. If you get something else out of this besides applying for scholarships, self-advocacy is a really big thing. You got to take care of yourself. Sometimes you'll get really lucky and you'll find great counselors and advisors who are going to cover all the bases with you and make sure you know everything you need to know, but that won't always be the case. Self-advocacy is a really big, important thing, and it's a good thing to start building it here if we haven't started that already. I would be looking at the college scorecard if I'm looking at multiple schools right now, especially if I haven't been awarded at a school yet. The college scorecard is going to give you pretty good information about income brackets and how much financial aid people in those income brackets actually get on average. It's helpful information to know, especially if you're trying to figure things out right now with what you can expect an award. If you want to go a little deeper than that and try to really game out what you're going to receive, the net price calculator that you see listed above from the College Board is a tool that you could use. Plug in general information about from your FAFSA, income, household size, and you can get an estimate of what the awards are going to be at a particular institution. It's not a set in stone, it's not a guarantee, but it's an estimate. And again, if you're trying to decide whether that reach school is going to be possible, an estimate might be enough for you to make that decision.
Hey, Jack.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to tell folks we can do about 5 minutes for questions. So if you have questions, we'll put the resources up. If you have questions, go ahead and type those in the Q&A or chat, and we'll try to get to those.
Please do.
You don't have to stay on if you don't want to. I know it's like people need to get to dinner, but we can take some questions for the next 5 minutes.
Anything. I said after you exhaust all those public options, those local options, the scholarship websites you see linked down below are legitimate. They just are offering opportunities to everyone in the country, right? So you've got a bigger pool of people that you're competing with. And then again, the Chev website, studentaid.gov website. These are straight from the horse's mouth, right? So this is the federally mandated and the state mandated programs. It's the resources that you've got access to at each one of those levels. It's always a good place to start at your state and your federal level if you're really trying to get a full understanding of how financial aid works, how much funding is available, and the types of programs that are out there for you. All right. Any burning questions that are coming hot off the presses?
I don't see any, which means you did a great job.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to put down on my report. I'll always put that down.
Jake says, thank you very much. This was very informative.
Well, thanks for being here.
Yeah,
it's half the battle is it's coming to these kinds of things. If you come to these kinds of things, you're going to read your award letter very carefully, and you're going to know that it should be called a college financing plan, and you're going to know how to maximize your awards in the future.
SR, I wish I knew your name, SR, but SR said she submitted a question. I think I answered it earlier, but maybe not. Let me see. Let me see if I can find it. SR. Yes, I answered it in the Q&A box, but I will read it aloud. Why do I never see work study as an award, even though I have requested it? So I guess, you know, when you do your FAFSA, you can check off whether or not you want to be considered for work study. And I answered it, and Jack, you can add to this if you'd like. I just said, even if you request it on your FAFSA, doesn't mean that you qualify for it. So
yeah,
go ahead.
And all colleges are going to award work study a little differently. Some colleges will, if you have the box checked, they're going to just offer the amount of money that's out there that they have in the funding to students. And it's going to be the first group of students that applied and had that box checked. And I can promise you that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of more students then there's money to go around who've checked the work study box and are interested in an award. Most colleges, my experience, especially if you're not in that first group to get awarded, you have to request work study from the institution itself. You have to request the award to be processed and awarded to you. Even if you're eligible, it may not be something that automatically comes to you. And there might be again, everyone does things a little bit differently, but there might be a waiting list. There could be a waiting list based off of need. There could be a waiting list based on when someone had asked or requested a position. My institution, we do things more competitively, actually. There's not a waiting list per se, but you've got to apply and you've got to beat out other students for the available jobs just because there's only so much money to go around and there's just far more students who are interested. If you really want your student to partake in the work study program, best thing that we can do is apply early and contact the college very early. Now would be a great time. How do we get a work study award and how do we get a work study job? When do we start applying, or when do you start the evaluation process? And what can I do to make sure that I've got the best chance of being selected? But it's not something I would, again, as you said, Tiernan, I would not expect it to be on most students' accounts because the amount of money that's available that they can actually pay out in work study versus the amount of people who check that box, it's just an astronomical difference.
Yes. Another question. Why do they include step parents' information on the FAFSA?
The honest answer is because they want to provide less resource. It's a budgeting thing. It's part of it. You know, the idea is that the idea is that those resources are available to the household.
Yeah.
So that's the idea, right? So that every year that you update the FAFSA, you're not looking at, you know, the last 18 years, you're looking at that year only. And in that year, the household income was step parent plus biological parent, and the household resources were paid by both those incomes. That's the assumption. It may not be the case, and it may be something that, you know, I've had families where they've said, I have a legal agreement that says, you know, the other parent will pay the bill. I don't want to be on the FAFSA. I don't want my new spouse to be on the FAFSA. That doesn't fly. Unfortunately, the federal government wants to see biological parents remarried, you want to see step parents information as well. It's considered part of the household. And I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon. There are some big changes coming down the pike to the FAFSA in the next year and a half, 2 years. We'll be having maybe a completely different presentation than this 2 years from now. But I don't see that that's changing. It's very likely that they're going to keep that requirement that step parents are part of the equation. So I actually have this situation where my brother-in-law has got children that will be going to school soon, college soon. He is engaged to his fiance. I told him not to marry. Do not get married to each other until they fill out that first year's FAFSA. And again, it's okay for me to say that because that's the situation they're in. I can say that. Maybe you don't want to make that as your primary goal when you're deciding whether or not to get married, that question. But as soon as your biological parents married, step parents information is going to go on that FAFSA every year unless things were to change.
Yeah, Jack, maybe they can't wait. They have to be married like right away.
I know. That's the thing. I told him, hey, can you wait 16 months and you're going to get a lot better financial aid. But those are the trade-offs, right? What do we do for love?
That's right. But that's a whole did you say 16 months?
It's 16 months because they're 2 years out. So
yeah. So that's 16 months they could be married.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll be married 5 years tomorrow. Just let me throw that out there.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you.
There's better be a nice box, nice hard box wrapped very nicely.
I haven't seen anything yet.
Tennis bracelets are 5 years, right?
Ooh. Well, I don't know. Traditionally, I think metal
or just diamond studs, something like that. Whatever. That's what my wife tells me. Whatever the highest.
I know. As I say, every year is probably diamonds for your wife now. Traditional is wood, so we'll see. I don't know. Anyway, okay. Any more questions? Let me see. Thank you, Shanika. Shanika said congratulations. Oh, Sandra was just saying she's gone to the school to ask about the work study and she's never received it. Sandra, have they given you an answer? They can tell you why you're not receiving it. I mean, they're the ones that are going to award it. So I just say go back to them if you didn't get an answer.
Well, yeah, and again, it is perfectly fine. Look, I'm not going to say that some people won't be not the nicest if you advocate. Maybe they don't give you the warmest answer if you're making sure you cover your bases, but that's their job, is to give you the right information, and their job is to answer your questions. So if someone is not clearly explaining to you why you're not getting a work study award, or why you're not qualified, or why it's taking so long to process, you keep asking that question until you get the answer. And if you have struggles with that individual, the same person, the frontline person you're speaking with, you should ask for a manager, an assistant director. It's okay. Many schools' financial aid offices, the front line that they have are going to be sometimes work study students, a lot of times part-time individuals, and sometimes call centers. And that's just because of the nature of things. They need those resources to be able to do the back-end work that's the job, right? To do the verification and do the awarding that needs to be done. The nature of things is that you may not get the best answers from that front line. And there should be a good way for that front line to get those questions to someone like me or someone who's actually doing the processing to give you good quality answers, but sometimes there's not in there. So it's okay to keep asking, and it is perfectly fine to go to the next level up. Do it politely, respectfully, and it shouldn't have any impact on you negatively at all. And it's completely understandable, and that's what I will tell all of my students to do too, even if it's my institution that we're giving them trouble.
Good job, Eric. That was good. Okay, well, I guess this is it. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A.
Yeah, and I'm gonna just plug in. It's just taken me a little while to figure that out. Can I put my email in here? Am I able to do that?
I would say you could put it in the chat.
Yeah, I'm trying to, and it's not going through. Let me try again here. Oh, I got you. I was in the Q&A. Okay. In the chat window is my email, everyone who's still on here. So those of you who stayed, you get the goods. jzaguirre at nvcc.edu. I do not care where you're going to school, where you plan on attending, going out of state. Virginia's got great schools though. But wherever you're going, I want you to be financially successful. So you can ask me any question that you want, and I'll give the best answer that I can.
Okay, John and Jack. What, John? Wait a minute. I thought you
know.
said Jack.
I know. It's going to come from this John. Officially, I'm a John Jack.
You're going to ask for John. He's tricking y'all. No, I was kidding. And I'm going to put my email address here too. No, I'm just kidding. If you have questions, I work for the state, though, so I can answer general questions about state grants and things like that. But if you want to know specifically why you weren't awarded a state grant, then that's going to have to go to someone like, well, that's going to have to go to the specific college. But I can answer general questions. So here's and financialaid@chev.edu goes directly to me. So it's just the easier than spelling out my name, especially my first name.
I'm gonna get me one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My maiden name was Macaulay. And I was like T-I-E-R. It's like Jackson is much easier, but it's still tyranny trips people up. So I was just like, I need financialaid@chev.edu. So
great.
All right. Well, that's it, everyone. I have some spaghetti waiting on me downstairs. So
Wonderful.
So I'm going to eat dinner now. Everyone, thank you for participating.
Thanks for being here tonight.
I hope you got some good information. And
wish you all the best, everyone.
Yeah. I'll email the presentation to you at the slides as well, at the email you used to register. So thank you.
All right. Have a great evening, everyone.